I'm a little washed out from this sunlight, these rays coming in. One of the leading stories in the media industry right now is the cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which was the most successful late night talk show this year due to perceived political motivations from CBS's owner, Paramount. Rumor has it that they cut The Late Show in order to appease the current US president, and if so, that really sucks. But I'm not sure I'm as amped up about this right now as I should be. I mean, I've seen social media outrage about this. I've seen Jimmy Kimmel put out a billboard endorsing Stephen's show, and Jon Stewart told CBS to sack up. It seems the stage has been set for Colbert as a type of mainstream resistance figure, a political dissident having his platform taken away by an unruly dictator. The only problem is, Stephen Colbert is not a political dissident. He's not even much of a progressive, if one at all. He's not railing against the status quo, he is the status quo. And as much as he jabs at the current president for his frequent gaffes and ghoulery, the substance of his critique is ultimately tame, visionless, and beyond everything, a bit limited. Stephen Colbert is an interesting guy, and I can understand why many gravitate to him or empathize with him. He was born the youngest of 11 children. At the age of 10, he lost his father and 2 brothers who died in a plane crash. And he will sometimes talk about his experience of grief and love in a very captivating way. He has a way with words, and although he made his bones as a comedian, he's also an accomplished actor, musical theater performer, and writer. He's good at talking, and fairly capable of discussing a wide variety of topics with equal parts sensibility and humility. That's why it's kind of funny that he got his breakout success from pretending to be a right-wing bigot. The character, Stephen Colbert, which the person, Stephen Colbert, played on The Daily Show and his hit spin-off, The Colbert Report, is a pompous right-wing ideologue, a freewheeling spoof of the kind of bigoted, anti-intellectual elitism that has defined the American right wing since at least the mid-20th century. To give you a sense of what this guy was up to, at one point a hashtag Cancel Colbert campaign saw centrists and right-wingers call for an end to the show after he satirized the use of a racial slur as the name of a prominent football team. Formerly known as the Washington Redskins, the NFL team's name was finally changed to the Washington Commanders in 2020 after decades of protest. But in 2014, the organization's owner, Dan Snyder, attempted to placate Native American outrage by making a Washington Redskins Original Americans Foundation, which tepidly said it'd look at helping indigenous nations or something. It was a total farce, and Colbert seized on that by having his character announce his own foundation, the Ching Chong Ding Dong Foundation for Sensitivity to Orientals or whatever. Now, as a person of East Asian descent, meaning a guy who's been called a Ching Chong among other racial slurs in the past, I personally think that was a good bit, especially at the time. It's so clearly absurd, and it so clearly gets at the absurdity of what Snyder was trying to do. I don't think the bit would work super well today though, not because I think everyone has super soft soy woke brain rot or something, but because of quite the opposite. It's clear now that it doesn't matter to the right wing at all whether or not they're racist or any other kind of bigot. They're actually quite proud of it, and nobody is able to hold them accountable for it. In retrospect, this is ultimately the problem with Colbert as well as his peer Jon Stewart and their brand of political comedy. It was purely based on pointing out how absurd and evil the Republicans are, how hypocritical they were, with facts and logic, of course.
But guys like us, we don't pay attention to the polls. We know that polls are just a collection of statistics that reflect what people are thinking in reality. And reality has a well-known liberal bias.
And as good as they are at doing that most of the time, they place way too much emphasis on how important it is to do that. And honestly, this was made clear in October of 2010, when both comedians launched the Rally to Restore Sanity and or Fear gathering. Now, the gathering was a response to Glenn Beck's Restoring Honor rally in August of that year, which was a weird, mealy-mouthed appeal to America as a Christian nation. Stewart and Colbert organized the Rally to Restore Sanity and or Fear rally as basically a celebration of centrism and a critique of political polarization. President Obama praised it. Oprah Winfrey flew people out to go see it. Bear in mind, this was a time when the Republicans were hostile to everything the Obama administration proposed, whittling the Affordable Care Act into a minor healthcare reform plan that barely addressed the root issue of America's health problems. Mitch McConnell swore his mission was to make Obama a one-term president. But to Stewart and Colbert, the problem here wasn't that the right wing was making an aggressive push against all the progressive reform Americans needed and wanted, what they hoped Obama would deliver in 2008. This was a problem of people being mean, unkind, over the top. The rally was attended by over 200,000 people. Many of them held up signs saying things like, "I disagree, but I respect your opinion," and "Thou shalt not be a dick." And Stewart gave a rousing speech at the end, decrying the media as the country's 24-hour political pundit perpetual panic conflictinator, proclaiming that most Americans don't live their lives solely as Democrats, Republicans, liberals, or conservatives, and praising the value of compromise. A few days later, compromise lost. The Republicans took the House of Representatives and broke the Democrats' supermajority. You might know that in recent years, people on the left have become more hostile to centrism, not because they don't care about logic or empathy, but because they recognize centrism is a sham. The idea behind it is it's supposed to be the reasonable middle of the political aisle, right? But is it really that in practice? The majority of Americans poll consistently as wanting universal healthcare. Universal healthcare should thus be a centrist position. The majority of Americans consistently vote against war, particularly the funding of Israel's war machine. An arms embargo of Israel is therefore a centrist position. That's how it should work, right? But in actuality, neither political party cares about being reasonable or what Americans actually think. They care about upholding empire and making money for billionaires. They just disagree on how to do that. Even as Colbert continues to rail against Trump and the MAGA right wing, much to their chagrin, he does so with appeal to reason. Can you believe how wacky these people are? How bigoted and radical they are? How hypocritical they are? Egads. Well, yeah, Stephen, I can believe it. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's why they got elected. There's this idea that Colbert types have that the world has gone crazy, everyone is too mean and polarized, and we need to go back to sense and reason. My question is, when did that time ever exist? In the 2010s, the Obama era was plagued by the increasingly pro-war Tea Party, and of course Obama himself happened to drone strike some innocent civilians. In the 2000s, George W. Bush of all people ran our country. In the 90s, Democrats were calling young black men super predators, and Republicans were more racist than that. Both parties have always had major, irreconcilable differences with each other, and when they came together, like Joe Biden and super racist Strom Thurmond in the 80s, it was to do monstrous shit, like cut social services and desegregation busing. People are tired of going into massive debt just to afford surgeries, to take care of loved ones, to afford a place to live. The rational thing would be to give them what they want, to uphold the supposed virtues of this country of everyone being free and having equal rights. But that's never been the case. So people get really angry, and then they start voting for people who seem really angry too, because maybe those people will shake up the establishment. And that's the real problem for Stephen Colbert. He loves the establishment. I want to close this video out by going through some quick hits from Stephen Colbert's current show to give you a sense of what kind of politics Colbert has and how selective he is when it comes to his stated ideals, being reasonable and fighting hypocrisy. In late July, Colbert had Michigan Democratic Senator Elisa Slotkin on. As it turns out, this interview was taped at the same time that a Senate vote to stop arms sales to Israel was happening, so she conveniently missed the vote, while at the same time garnering thunderous applause from Colbert's crowd while saying we should let aid into Gaza. In the hard-hitting interview, Colbert asked Slotkin questions like, is a hot dog a sandwich? He omitted to press Slotkin on voting to confirm 9 of Trump's cabinet nominees. He omitted to press Slotkin on her voting record, funding arms for Israel in an internationally recognized genocide, her vote on a completely unconstitutional and dangerous definition of anti-Semitism, etc. These are things that Slotkin was pressed on previously in a viral interview with Breaking Points.
You're not the president, but you have power. So what are you going to do? You voted for some of the aid that's been used to massacre children and innocents. If you were asked to support defensive weapons for Iran, defensive weapons for Russia, you wouldn't back that.
but because Israel's being shot at. I mean,
Well, so is
So is Iran. So is Russia.
Ukraine's shooting at Russia right now.
I'm sorry, this is the difference between allies, partners, and adversaries.
Why is it
No.
an ally then? Do you think AIPAC should register as a foreign lobby?
But clearly, Slotkin chose to go on Colbert's show right afterward, knowing that CBS's talk show host would let her do damage control. She even got to talk about how lovely and normal people are in the CIA, and about how important it is to have alpha energy. Great. Now this contrasts wildly with the energy that Colbert gave Zohran Mamdani alongside cross-endorser and NYC comptroller Brad Lander in the mayoral race a couple months ago. In fact, this was right before that mayoral Democratic primary. Colbert spent half the interview pressing Mamdani on Israel to the point that Lander, who is Jewish, had to intervene to direct the conversation back to equality and the rights of New Yorkers. You know, the people they were supposed to be presiding over. It's depressing that Colbert can feel energized to grill Zohran Mamdani, a New York City mayoral candidate, on how he might potentially endanger Jewish people because he doesn't support apartheid or genocide in a foreign country. But when someone like Slotkin, who has voted to support that genocide, is appearing on his show, she is asked about alpha energy and hot dogs. This is your progressive journalism resistance figure? This is your face of oppression under Trump? A multi-millionaire who grills progressives with AIPAC talking points? It's no surprise then that when Kamala Harris appeared on Colbert's show the other day, she was treated to nothing more than softballs to offer personal reflections, relevant of course to the book that she was selling. There were no questions about Harris going from staunchly opposing Trump's border wall to wanting to build said wall. No questions about the Biden administration's genocidal policies, continuously funding Israeli weapons, all but creating the crisis in Gaza that Colbert has recently spoken so sadly about. We got Kamala saying she hasn't watched the news since the election, and instead of this being treated as a self-centered retreat from public responsibility as a politician, her job, it is peddled as a sobering reflection on just how much she must have gone through. Colbert's ideology purports itself as one firmly focused on peace, on sensibility, on reaching across the aisle and having tough conversations while respecting everyone's humanity. But when it comes to the humanity of the poor and working classes, the desperation of their struggles against poverty, Colbert's centrism shows more hostility than civility. I've been pretty critical, even harsh on Colbert through this video, and I want to emphasize here that I do, like some aspects of his journalism, that he even attempts to cover politics with dignity and attentiveness at all. I would prefer Colbert's Late Show over Jimmy Kimmel's or Jimmy Fallon's. Bars in hell, but there you go. But the big problem is, you can only get so far when appealing to rationality or common sense. The fact is, common sense is highly subjective and not common at all. In fact, a lot of really important knowledge about the world is very uncommon. When you assume yourself to be the voice of reason, it is easy as ever to become unreasonable. You lose sight of what happens outside of your full-rimmed glasses. You forget to utilize the self-criticism and curiosity necessary to actually stay educated, to actually be the voice of reason. And that's why Colbert is such a valuable tool of rich corporations who will surely find ways to collaborate with him and platform him after his deal with CBS is up. Sure, late-night talk shows are no longer profitable, a fact that probably has as much to do with his show's cancellation than any political agenda, if I'm being honest. But capital will always line up to line the pockets of public figures that help people feel informed and empathetic. As long as you make folks feel that way, they don't actually have to be that way. And that keeps the line going up. Thanks for watching. If you like this, subscribe to my Patreon. It helps keep my whole thing going. Thanks.